survival. That is, if we are being honest, the only thing that was truly required from Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club this season. And yes, more optimistic parts of the fan base may well have said that they wanted to build on last season's 9th place finish, but I would have said those fans were ignorant. If you look at the two teams that finished above them in 8th and 7th place respectively, Leicester City and West Ham United, and the seasons domestically that they have had, it goes to show that no one, and I do mean no one's, Premier League status can be taken for granted. But Tony Bloom and the background staff at Brighton and Hove Albion clearly were not reading off of my script, and not only have they already secured themselves the highest league finish in the club's history, Brighton and Hove Albion will be playing European football next season. And here to discuss with me just how Brighton have managed to do it is my good friend Sani That Sports Guy. The link to his page is in the bio, so please do me a favour, head over there and subscribe to his page. Sani, just how good have Brighton and Hove Albion been this season?
In the words of Gary Neville, unbelievable. Absolutely insane season. The fact that they had Graham Potter come in, who did a fantastic job last season. He's come in to start the season and done a pretty good job. He's obviously gone to Chelsea. De Zerbi's come in. Some people that didn't know him thought, oh, who's this guy? Listen, if you knew who he was, great manager. He's come in, took him to another level, in my opinion. And listen, like you said, European football's on the horizon. Another high finish for Brighton. Unbelievable season, Joey. I couldn't say anything else.
So to give the viewers a little bit of perspective, for those of you who don't know, Brighton and Hove Albion aren't a football club that have a massively rich history when it comes to winning league titles or anything like that. 1997, going into the last day of the season in the 4th tier of English football, Brighton and Hove Albion drew 1-1 at Hereford Town. Now, that point that they picked up that day was vital, because that was one point that they picked up that stopped them being relegated from the 4th tier of English football into non-league football, and in all likelihood stopped the club going extinct. And obviously then, in the years that followed, they started to climb the leagues, eventually ending up in the Championship. So they really became an established Championship side in the 2011-2012 season. And they were really pushing for Premier League football. They made the playoff in 3 of their last 4 Championship seasons before finally Chris Hughton coming in, getting them a 2nd place finish in that Championship and being promoted automatically. Now, when they came up again for another 4 seasons or so, they're just getting their feet under the table, so to speak, in the Premier League, getting themselves established. And finally, all of that hard work paid off and culminated in a top 10 finish. They finished 9th last season under Graham Potter. Now, I, at the time, could have probably been guilty for thinking this may well be as good as it gets for Brighton. I mean, I look back at my Premier League predictions from the start of the season, and I didn't actually have Brighton getting a top 10 finish. I think I had them about 12th, which, to be fair, even then, at the start of the season, expectations always change halfway through. But at the start of the season, if you ask an honest Brighton Hove Albion fan, would have probably took that. So how have they pushed on? Obviously, you mentioned De Zerbi, and I'm going to be honest, it's a manager that I didn't know too well. What have they done different this season that has made them push on and took them to the next level?
I think they have one of the best strategies of a football club in Europe. And you might be thinking that's hyperbole, you're getting caught up in the moment. But let's look at the managerial appointments. Like I said, Graham Potter and heralded, came into the club, changed it. But then, like you said, not many people had heard of De Zerbi when he came in. But he done a fantastic job in Italy, in Serie A with Sassuolo. He did an amazing job with Shakhtar as well. The only reason he left Shakhtar is because of what happened with the war, for example. He had players like Mudryk who came through. Now, I know Mudryk might not, be the biggest fan favourite at the moment, but he was the reason why Mudryk had all this hype, all this fanfare. Again, if you look at De Zerbi's style of play, a manager like Pep Guardiola coming out and saying the quotes that he's saying speaks volumes of how good De Zerbi is. So that is one aspect of the strategy I'm talking about. The other aspect of the strategy is their transfer recruitment. It is, for me, one of the best again in Europe. They have players come and go. Let's look at last couple of seasons, for example. Basuma went to Spurs. Everyone's talking about Basuma, how good he is, how he can fit into any club in the world. Granted, it might not have worked out for him in Spurs this season, but he's still a great player. Who did they sign? Caicedo for absolutely nothing. McAllister, another find. Who else? Trossard went for, what was it, 40 mil, was it, to Arsenal?
Yeah.
Who did they bring in? Matoma, who the season before was on loan. Again, no one heard of him. The only people that might have heard of him were people like me who are at university looking at dissertations. Obviously, he did his on dribbling, which, I recommend you guys read. But the thing is, again, where's this coming from? Evan Ferguson, again, people are talking about him going to a club like Man United. These young players that come through do unbelievable. increase their transfer value. They sell him off, and then what? They bring someone else in. Another player, just before I finish my monologue, Enciso, he came for like 8.5 million. Nobody heard of him. What happens? He's been fantastic. I'm pretty sure he scored at the Bridge as well. Yeah. His transfer value maybe next season is going to be unbelievable. A player you guys got now, Cucurella, sold for 60-odd million. Who did they bring in? Estupinian from Villarreal.
Who's a better player?
Who's a better player, fraction of the price, and has a very good chance of finishing team of the season. So again, transfer recruitment, unbelievable. Brighton, like I said, one of the best run clubs in Europe. I don't care what anyone says.
And obviously, you look at Cucurella, he hasn't gone on to do too well, in my opinion. But like, you look at the likes of Ben White, Dan Burn, players that Brighton have harboured and then gone on to sell on and done really well. The football day player as well.
Amazing.
You look at, listen, Pep Guardiola has been in the game long enough and had enough plaudits that he doesn't need to sing a team's praises for no reason, and he doesn't need to sing a manager's praises for no reason. You look at the fact that he said that they played the second best style of football in the league. Now, listen, that's subjective. It's for what you like, but you can't deny when you look at it, they play good football, man. And they've done a double over Chelsea this season. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't think it's that impressive to have done the double over Chelsea this season. Plenty of teams have. Funnily enough, rock bottom of the league, Southampton, done a double over Chelsea this season. They've also done the double over you boys. And we remember that first game of the season, we were sort of thinking, maybe a bit of an anomaly, some players are still on the beach, head's not in it, the old Ronaldo effect, will he go, won't he? A manager's first a manager's first game at the club, but it wasn't a flash in the pan. They went on and they carried on and continued. Even a couple of weeks ago, that last gasp McAllister penalty. Brighton are a serious team this season, and the good thing is also how they've bounced back. Look at shock results this season, there's plenty of shock results. Do you know, I think the biggest shock result this season is Everton beating Brighton 5-1. And if you go on context of maybe 2 years ago, even last year when they finished 9th, okay, you wouldn't expect it. A 9th place team against a team that sort of survived relegation right at the end in Everton, but I wouldn't put it down as a shock result of the season. That probably speaks to the magnitude of how well Brighton have done. That for me is the shock result of the season, because that sort of stuff just doesn't happen this season. They are such a well-oiled ship. But the question I want to put to you is, how do they continue in this vein of form? Because I don't want to put the cosh on it too much. And there's so much room for optimism with Brighton fans that there's no reason to not be optimistic. And I understand that. But it does give me a little bit of a throwback and a little bit of a flashback to a team in years gone by that we looked at and we just sung their praises so much. They'd have these players in, they'd sell them on, they'd get big fees for them, and they'd bring someone else in. It wouldn't matter. That team's Southampton. They'd have a wonder kid in Theo Walcott. They sell him on, well, you're not going to be able to replace him. What's that? Oxlade-Chamberlain coming through? Gareth Bell. He's scoring free kicks for Southampton, doing a great job. They sell him on, there's going to be a left-back shot. What's that, Luke Shaw? And there are comparisons to be drawn. Southampton are a team that played third division football in our lifetime and came up through the ranks, impressed so much in the Premier League, established outfit. And with those sort of teams, the wheel just keeps turning until inevitably one day it doesn't keep turning. And you see Southampton slip out of the league this year. What do Brighton have to do going forward to make sure that, okay, maybe not next season, maybe not the season after that, but they are a sustained Premier League club rather than one that comes up, has 6-7 seasons of real glory in the Premier League and then slips back down and we don't see them again?
I think there's 3 things they can definitely look at. I think the first thing is keep this transfer policy that they have. They sell a player for big money. They recruit a player that they've clearly scouted for a couple of seasons. That player comes in, does a job. Keep that going. It's been seen, tried and tested. Now, there's a likelihood that McAllister's going to go this summer, probably to Liverpool. He's going to fetch, 60-odd million. They can use at least a quarter of that on a player that people might not have heard of before, but then he comes in, does a job. And that's a credit to the manager as well. Again, that's the other thing as well. Manager, I think De Zerbi at some point is going to get poached by one of the bigger clubs, because I think, with all due respect to Brighton, I think he's too big for Brighton. I think a manager of that quality, he needs to shine on a bigger stage. I mean, he even spoke about Caicedo and McAllister, saying, I think they're too big. They're too good not to be playing under the bright lights of Champions League. And I think the other one is, when it comes to transfer, buy experienced players. Because you mentioned Southampton, and what was the biggest reason for Southampton's downfall this season? Inexperience. You told me a couple of weeks ago as well, the fact that the players they signed had 0 Premier League minutes. That is unbelievable. They only had 3 players over the age of 30. Now, there's big rumours that James Milner's going to Brighton. What a fantastic signing that is. If you're going to be in Europe, you need experience, one, and you need a large squad. Buying a player like Milner's fantastic. Even keeping players like Danny Welbeck. People might give Danny Welbeck a lot of stick.
Yep.
But the guy's experienced, he'll get you goals, and you need players like that, and he'll give
Adam
you
Lallana.
He's another one as well. I think just keep this going, that same policy. Don't go against the grain. Now, a lot of teams might get happy and think, oh, we're doing really well. Oh, we're in Europe. Let's go for that star player that, you know what, he might not fit the system that we've got, but he's a star name. You don't want to go through that. I'm a Man United fan speaking from experience. You want to stick to your plan. Don't go and then ruin the plan by buying a player that really shouldn't be in the team and in your squad. They need to keep what they're doing right now. And the old adage goes, don't fix what isn't broken. Keep this going, Brighton, because you can stay here for a very long time.
One thing I would say is we look at the fall of clubs like Southampton, and I think if you're a viewer of this video and you're watching this now, the main thing you're going to say straight away is, yes, but look, there's a very glaring, obvious thing here that we haven't pointed out. Ownership change. So with Tony Bloom at the helm, you know, with the decisions he's made so far, the calls he's made, and all of those have been vindicated, I wouldn't bet against him making the right call in future because, like you said, big clubs will come in for De Zerbi, you know? Tottenham Hotspur at the moment, they're looking at is it the final manager? Looking at the final manager. I'm not gonna even pretend I know who it is, what his name is, because I don't. But they're looking at the final manager. You know, De Zerbi would have been a shout there. I heard people when Potter was sat going, well, let's go get De Zerbi. And I was thinking, oh, fuck off. Like, we can't just... I feel bad for the club almost. I'm a Chelsea fan, but at the same time, like, come on, have some respect. Do you know what I mean? But eventually, De Zerbi will go. He will go to a bigger club. And then there will be a void there that they need to fill. But with Tony Bloom pulling the strings upstairs and the background staff they've got there, be hard to bet against them making the wrong decision. So I think ultimately, if you're a Brighton and Hove Albion fan, it's a good time right now, and things are really looking on the up. And even next season, if they don't contend for those European spots, I think if there are fans remaining, which I'm sure there are plenty from that 1997 season when they stayed in the Football League on the last day with that draw against Hereford, they would have no doubt bit your hand off for within, 25 years from that date, European football, seeing their club under the bright lights, really.
Unbelievable.
And we look at that Europa Conference League, and it was almost like a banter competition when it come about, Spurs in it and whatnot. That Europa Conference League's all right, man. That's all right. Look, personally, on my high horse, would I want Chelsea to be in it? No, not really. And I'm sure you wouldn't really want Man United to be in it. But if I'm a team, you know, if I'm a Villa, if I'm a Brighton, even a Tottenham Hotspur, I don't think Tottenham should be snobbish about it. I'll take what they could get.
As well.
Newcastle at the start of the season, possibly. So things are looking good for Brighton. But I want to hear from the Brighton fans. What do you think of this project, of this? Listen, I don't want to go too far to call it a fairy tale, but let's be honest. When we flash back to that 97 season staying in the Football League, it is a fairy tale what has happened at your club, and I want to know your thoughts on it. As soon as this video drops, I will be live in the comments replying to every single comment, so let me know your thoughts. And once again, please remember, head over to Sani's YouTube channel, link in the bio to this video, subscribe for all of his content, and we will see you in the next video.